My buddy Will and I, we were going to tape a video on equity versus equality and what the definitions are. Somehow it went into this gender versus sex and how that's going in America today. So what we did is we taped it, and here it is. If you like it, hit the like button. If you want to subscribe to the channel, that'd be great too. If you want to keep the conversation going, go ahead and leave a comment below. But most importantly, please leave a comment below about my shirt that I'm currently wearing. You see, it's super comfy, but I got it hoping for like a suburban safari vibe, and I feel like I'm getting kind of a dad bod vibe.
There was an article that came out after an event that a few different people on my socials timelines posted about I believe it was a Turkish fighter and possibly an Italian fighter, two women boxers, and one knocked the other out, didn't knock the other out. After 46 seconds, the Italian fighter backed away and said, "Oh, I've never been hit so hard in my life. I'm done. I'm done. Oh no, she hit me hard in the face. Except she's really a he." And so, it spurred like this entire conversation about like what's fair, what's not. That's equity. Is that equality? Should she be participating and all that? And somebody kept on throwing around, that's equity, bro. And I'm like, nope, it's not equity. No, that is not equity at all. Like, you're not using that word right, and it really means something. So let's embrace what that really means.
Yeah, a couple things. One, I'm pretty sure that fighter was Algerian, and just for everybody out there, we're obviously in the middle of the Olympics. So if you're listening to this a year from now, there's a big controversy, and it's funny because I don't use the social media as much as you do. I don't use the social media as much as most people do. So I've probably put up 20 posts on like a Facebook or an X or Twitter, even an Instagram in the last 10 years, and nobody cares because I don't have a bunch of followers, and the ones I do have, they're either friends or family, and I actually know them. They're not just see how many people I can get. And I got to tell you, I got like 40 responses on that thing, and nobody wanted to hear what anybody had to say. Everybody just wanted to tell everybody they were right. And if you're like me, and probably will to some extent, and most Americans, that's what you want. You want an echo chamber. You want everybody to think the way you do, and you don't want to hear their point of view. You just want to tell them your point of view. And that kind of leads into what you were saying about equity and equality. I'm interested to see how that particular conversation came up after the Algerian fighter.
What's the standard? Like, what's the standard? At what cutoff? Do you get down to genetic testing, or do you look back what would have happened 30 years ago when there wasn't really any real way, or maybe 40, 50, 60 kind of shit. I don't know how long. But do you look at that and say, that standard, like what standard is woman, what standard is not that, what standard is gender female, what standard is gender male? And we're going to get lit up for using the term gender wrong.
Well, that's okay. And we're using our versions of it, guys. And, it's okay if you get mad, just don't take it personally. We're not out to attack. And I think part of the situation currently, which we have going on mostly, I think in the United States is, if you explain to me how you want to be addressed, okay, I will probably politely address you that way. If you demand it of me, I probably won't. But if you've done neither or neither, you can't get mad at me. Like, I'm not going to tiptoe around it. I'm going to look at you and I'm going to go with conventional wisdom and say, hey, man, hey, woman, hey, woman, hey, woman. I probably won't say, hey, woman.
Hey, woman. Hey, woman.
I'll probably, I'll say, ma'am, or something like that. And if you not correct me, but give me your version of it, that's fine. And if you do it nicely, I'll say, okay, that's fine. I have no problem with that. I'll just call you by your name then.
What if somebody just, you say, oh, and you gesture and say, she, and she's like, or he says, oh, I identify as male. It's simply that simple. Is that where do you stand on something?
If you said it like that, like if I said to you, he, and you said to me, I actually identify, my pronouns are she, her, and I identify as a woman, and you said it like that, I'd say, oh, okay,
cool.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean,
I apologize. I wouldn't apologize. I would probably say, gotcha, right. Moving forward, you got it. But what I don't like is if I said, she, and you go, don't do that. You didn't ask me. No, I'm not going to ask you. Because when there were only two genders, and it was only he or she, I didn't
Right.
ask either. We don't go around just asking. Like it's not that, it's one of those things that there's a certain amount of time if this hangs on, if this becomes a thing that lasts. Okay. And I don't know that it will. I don't know that it won't. We never know what's going to hang on and what's not in life in general. Then we'll get used to it. And a generation from now, it won't be a thing. For now, everybody's still getting used to it.
Dude, I think you just made a very succinct, very clean, very clear argument. And it's going to take.
But back to equity, no, not even back to equity. What I enjoy about political discussion, and oddly enough, the boxer thing on my post became political. To me, it's not political. To me, it's scientific, but everything's political nowadays. And I understand why it's political, because basically if you lean left, you're probably on the side of that person should be allowed to identify however they want in some fashion of this, and you shouldn't stop them from being who they're being. And if they identify as a woman, let them identify as a woman. Now, some people will have nuance to that, which is good. I like nuance in these kind of conversations. And if you lean right, you're probably like, yeah, men with men, women with women, which sounds two things. One, it sounds logical, and two, it sounds like you're really brushing off a
Well, I
certain
was going
amount
to say
of
in 2024, it sounds almost vague.
yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound vague to me, but I'll put it this way. If you identify and if you really feel like, and I've always identified exactly how I look in the general stand, like conventionally as a male. But if you really are living in a body and you feel like that's not how the body you should be in, that's horrible. Now, I don't know if that ends up being something that God messed up, something that just happens inherently to people because of the chemicals in their brain, or if it's a fad. And don't get mad at me when I'm saying this. I'm just trying to be logical through it. But if it's a mental illness, I don't know. It could be any of those things, or something else. Anyway, that's torturous.
Yeah.
Like, that's a horrible, horrible thing. However, that doesn't manifest itself into you being able to now compete in sports with other people that you're bigger and stronger than because of science. So one thing I have a lot of sympathy for, but that doesn't translate to do whatever you want to do.
Agreed. Yeah. So, I mean, my take on it is like, it's hard in 2024 because we've kind of, in the past 25 years, man, like floodgates, 30 years, 40 years, like in my memory, right? The floodgates have opened up about what people could be socially. We got to see people go from being able to be publicly gay to being able to publicly identify however they want with some limited amount of, protection to their existence, even though they still face a lot of backlash culturally and things like that. But there's a lot more opportunity for that life than we've ever seen. And yeah, we are in a matter of transition. And the horrible thing about a matter of transition, and being in a period of transition, is the arbitrariness of it all. Now, take sports, right? Sports is where it's just the worst for me, because sports, by its own definition, is arbitrary. You have rules where you say you're going to go this far, and then you're going to get another set of these to go that far. It's just arbitrary, right? And then you introduce
Right, like, why is it 10 yards for a first down? Why isn't it 12? Like, I see it's totally arbitrary, right?
It's arbitrary to begin with, and then you layer on this entire arbitrariness of this transition mindset of where we are right now. Of we don't know what gender is. We don't, everybody has a different opinion of what gender is, and there's an argument about it, and they're trying to bucket it out to where only certain people can play in certain things. It's like, okay, I get that, because you've got to have the ability to have the people who can compete at a certain level be able to compete at that level, and they or they can't, and if they can't, then there should be other ways for them to compete. There should be other ways or they just can't. I mean, and that's the reality of life.
And again, we're gonna you think we're gaslighting you? We're not doing it. If I gaslight anyone here, I'm not doing it on purpose. Just go compete with the men then. How come you don't see women who are born as women competing with men? How come Caitlyn Jenner, like everybody isn't like why isn't there a Caitlyn Jenner who's now in the men's decathlon, who identified as or was born a woman, identifies as a man, and so they decided to do that? Well, because science dictates that men are bigger, faster, and stronger, and that dictates that people can get. It doesn't really matter. It matters in every sport from a fairness standpoint, but it really matters in a contact sport.
Oh yeah.
People can get hurt.
Well,
You start getting into judo and boxing and MMA and
yeah. Well,
no.
there's no. It's not like running, right? Where you have a overall winner and then men and female and men 18 to 22, and you know, it's not that. When you're in two people in a ring, or you are a team of people against another team of people, and you're actually physically battling each other, it's fundamentally different. And there's got it that you have to create exception for that. You have to create reality behind that. Anything else, I think, is just. I think it's baby town frolics, man.
Yeah, and I think that this stream is going to cut a few different ways, because to me it's like you didn't really ever have to, like, men and women never really competed for anything against each other, as far as I can remember, as far back, and America's not that old of a
Tennis.
place, but as far as like marathons and stuff like that, there's generally been women and men, but we didn't have to make up a category, because it's naturally you come out as a woman or a man, and that's what you
Exactly.
are. So I don't know if, whether it's trying to get votes and be politically correct and get people who identify a certain way to vote for you, so you're going to push a certain narrative, or if you feel bad for somebody, so you want to make sure their mental health is better. However you come down on the issue of gender and sex, it's inherently obvious that there are a lot of things in this world we don't have to figure out. It's just figured out for us.
Oh, well.
Like, so if we start making stuff up, or identifying in different ways, and don't get mad when I say making stuff up, because to be fair, gender fluidity and cis this and that, these things have been made up.
Arbitrary. Gender is arbitrary. It is.
Sure. And everybody, people say to me, "What's a made up word?" I got news for you. All words are made up. Like, we started with no words, so they're all made up. But what I think, this is a particular subject that I think a lot of people have a real problem seeing the other side's point of view on. And I don't think it's political in this one. I usually do when you have that. I think it's like, I'm going to sit with my Democrats, I'm going to sit with my Republicans, totally just to win. I think this one, really, people have a hard time seeing.
I think that there's a there's a strangeness to the argument that is hard to wrap your brain around.
Do you think? I think that people of a certain age, younger than us, it's kind of the cool thing to do now too. And I think that lends itself to minimizing the reality of some people.
Well, I want to come back to that last point, because I'm not sure what you mean, but I agree with you completely. I think that it is the same form of self re-identification, or self, basically creating, like when I was in high school and college, everybody was a hippie, or everybody was a goth, not a goth kid. At that time, they just wore black eyelashes and tutu. Yeah.
Skaters.
You had all these people, and I feel like this has just become a new way of identifying yourself, and representing yourself. And whether it's genuine or not genuine, is this real a thing as, like the guy who I know who is a sales guy who still skates on the weekends, I mean, I don't know how that plays out 20 years from now for somebody who is at 15's decided that they're pansexual, but that's where life takes you.
I don't know what pansexual means. What does pansexual mean?
Having sex with kitchen implements.
Oh, is that inanimate objects?
No, I don't know.
Is that pansexual?
I think it's actually just open to anything.
Well, this is a good point. Like, it's tough to keep up. Like, I don't mind I didn't mind 15 years ago when I didn't know what derpy meant, okay? because my nephews call me derpy. I was like, cool. And they're like, cool. You're so derpy. And I'm like, that can't be good. But to quote unquote misgender someone, I don't think you can misgender someone until you've agreed to politely address them how they want to be addressed. Then you can
Oh yeah.
misgender them. Not you can't misgender in my world. If you want to be called a certain thing that is off of the norm that has been going on for hundreds of years, it's not like we're 40 years deep on he or she. It's been since written word. Okay, something like that. You're going to come back to
No,
that.
no, I'm
But
agree.
if you want to be called something else, and if I agree to it, and then it's kind of on me if I forget and go, hey man, damn it, I'm sorry. Then I will apologize for it. But I'm not wrong if you say you want to be called a certain thing, and I go, I'm just going to call you by your name then.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Actually, I just wish most people would do that. God, man, I love hearing my name because it's a helping verb, and I hear it in almost every sentence. Whenever anybody's talking about the future,
Wow.
they bring me into the conversation.
Man, my name never gets said for shit.
Hey, no, that's not true. Your name gets thrown around
what?
a lot at Renaissance fairs and porn shoots.
That's great. Boogie Nights?
Boogie Nights reunions.
Movie-a-thons? It's so true. Did any of this lead? So how did
We
this
ended up
lead
in
to
gender.
equity?
We ended up in gender
the other night.
I mean, I don't even know. This was the thing, is right. So this is really what the crux of the argument is. Like, what's the difference between sex and gender, and how do you take that difference and apply it in a non hold on in a non in an equitable way?
Okay. So how do you? What did you come up
I
with?
honestly think that you just basically you've got to start instituting. You've got to define what you want, what everybody.
What's fun in that
I think
particular sentence or thought? There's a lot to define.
To define the culture under which we live. We become a sportocracy.
Is that like idiocracy? So in what you just said, you have to define sex and gender, then you have to define equity and equality. It's a very confusing thing to talk about. And I think to most people, they're just like, I don't want to deal with this. Things have always been this way. They stay that way. And if you don't like it, you know what? You're a weirdo. And I don't need to conform to your little world that you live in of weirdos. And on the other end, it's if you don't conform to my end of my weirdo, what you think is a weirdo, I'm going to get all over you and get very upset.
Here's the thing, man. Like, whatever happened to the days when weirdos was awesome? Remember Baltimore? The great director from Baltimore, John Waters.
Baltimore director? Oh, John Waters.
Define
yeah.
all of these people. Here's the great thing about social friction, about this conversation in general. If everything was accepted, there would be no room for freaks. And if there were no room for freaks, where would the amazingly talented and obscure be elevated by their just sheer differentness?
God, it was so nice. It was so poetic.
Keep the freaks, man. Like, let's not accept everything. Let's keep social norms a little static. Let's keep some people on the fringes where it's weird.
Well, it's in the word social norms. It's not social everythings. It's social norms.
I know, but there is,
which means there can be social abnorms, and I agree with that. I just thought of something when you were saying that whole thing. I kind of am probably going to go back on what I said a little bit, but I still mean this. Here's my point. If I'm a pretty good read of people. Okay, I'm not the greatest in the world, but I can read a room and I can read a person pretty well. If I believe you and I believe there's a struggle inside of you and you want to be called something, I'm way more apt to move with you emotionally and help you through that and call you what you want to be called than if I think you're just doing it because you think it's cool right now.
Well, because you and unlike a lot of not your, but a lot of people in this country on every side of the spectrum, you have empathy. A lot of people don't.
So how do we resolve this? Through like generationally?
I mean, honestly, at some point, and then it's a pendulum, right? It swings right, it swings left, it swings right, it swings left. We eventually keep moving forward. The umbrella gets wider. But I mean, you're always going to have morons, and you're always going to have stupid people, and you're always going to have zealots, and you're always going to have people who just have to define themselves by their opposition to something else. And I mean, that's just reality, right? So as much as you have people who are like, I'm just trying to figure out who the hell I am, you're going to have somebody who has to oppose that because they just need to oppose something,
or they don't want the change. They're like, I'll tell you who you are.
Those are the vocal ones, right? The silent majority, which is really the silent, ever shrinking minority done, but still called the silent majority. They speak, and like the ones you hear, the echo chamber, those are the zealots, man, and those are the people who have to have something to be opposed to and find an audience that will embrace their opposition.
So maybe we can run through it like this. Maybe we can kind of wrap this in a nice bow like this. I have two questions for you. Let's say 70% of people are somewhere in the middle of this whole gender situation where they don't get mad if you call them the wrong pronoun, or on the other side, if you ask them, no matter how you ask them, they'll call you whatever you want to be called. That's fine. I think that's the majority.
I would say north of 70.
Okay, I was going to say 70 or 80. So let's then. So this is for the rest of the people. How should they approach the other side? Because there's got to be some, outside of the 95-year-old man who's still throwing N-bombs around because he's just an old white dude who grew up that way. I think we end up figuring stuff out eventually in this. We're pretty good about that in the country. As much as some people want to say the country, it's not what it used to be. I think we figure stuff out pretty well here in America.
This country was never what it used to be.
So let's say it's never. And you know what? It's always the worst time to be alive. What would be your piece of advice to both sides of the spectrum? What would be your piece of advice to person who's struggling with who they are or has figured it out and they're not what they appear to be traditionally? And what's your piece of advice to the other side, person who doesn't want to move at all, is going to call you exactly what people have been called for hundreds of years and does not want to think about your side of the story? Like what are a piece of advice for each one of them that might in some way touch them and say, I never thought of that.
I'm going to give two answers. I think it'll cover both. One is to slowly, calmly think about where your inability to process this comes from. Where does it come from? Does it come from your religion? Does it come from where does it come from? And maybe think about that, right? Maybe normalize that against the harm that that vitriol, that anger that probably goes against whatever you're kind of conforming against. Like what's that friction, man? Like figure out that friction, because that friction is erupting as something not cool. And that would be my advice to both of them, to try and figure that out. Right? Yeah, to both sides. The second piece of advice is to stop leaving your house, because it's probably only going to get weirder, no matter what. And welcome to the rodeo.
Will's an expert on equity. He spent his lifetime in the law firms of Johnson Johnson and Equity. Hey, it's hour 3 of me trying to do an intro, and I keep saying sexy gender, not sex and gender. Jesus, Dirk. My man Will is definitely
bald, white, male.
Excited. Hey, it's Dirk. I've spent more time on the intro than we spent on the goddamn video. Are you an ostrich right now? Are you injured? Stop saying sexy gender and stop using your movie phone voice.
This is gonna suck, man.